Today we're going to be talking about the major do's and don'ts of communication with an ex during and after a breakup. But let's get one thing out of the way. Should there be communication during a breakup? And the answer to this is actually comically simple. Yes, but it's really a matter of when you communicate more than anything else. So really, this video is going to make an argument that there are three main tenets of communication when it comes to dealing with an ex after a breakup. And those three main tenets are what we're going to be talking about. So let's just jump right into it. Tenet number one, the no contact rule is the foundation for everything. So lately, I've been talking to a lot of professional artists about their process, and it reminds me a lot of the purpose behind the no contact rule. So if you aren't familiar, I'm writing a book, and I got it in my head that I'd hire a few artists to illustrate the events going on in the book. And what's interesting is that the way in which the artists visualize a scene is fragmented in the best way possible. So there's really like three stages. There's the 3D modeling stage, there's the sketch stage, and then there's the painting stage. Now I know this seems like an off-topic area, but I promise I'm going to connect it in the most brilliant way possible. So what I'd like to do is show you a few random pictures that the artist I hired uses and how they approached each stage of the process. So the first stage is called the 3D modeling stage, and essentially this is the foundation of the painting. You're just getting everything positioned the way you want it to look, and you have sort of this 3D model. Next comes the sketch stage. Here's where you sketch over the 3D model to come up with the keyframe idea. Usually an artist will give you a little different angles in a couple of sketches to choose from. And then finally, there's the painting stage. This is finally, once the sketch has been chosen, you paint over it, fill in the details, make it beautiful. Now, one of the primary reasons that I showed you this was to explain to you how communication with your ex is going to work. Notice how the artists don't paint over anything until he or she has a sketch to work from. Does it take longer? Yes. Does it look better? Yes. And the same principles apply to communicating with your ex after a breakup. The number one mistake I see people making is that they put the cart before the horse. They don't build out their sketch. They have no foundation or plan on what they're going to say. And that's really what this video is going to do for you. And really it all starts with the no contact rule. So a few weeks ago, I actually interviewed one of our success stories, and basically she was the spirit animal for understanding this concept. In fact, many of the YouTube commenters of this video were so inspired by the interview that they left some of the most amazing comments. And what resonated so much with people who listened to her interview was her attitude. Her attitude was essentially this. Her ex-boyfriend breaks up with her and she goes, okay, you're lost. She jumps right into another no contact rule and is relentless in pursuing self-improvement. In other words, she's building out one heck of a sketch. The irony here is that the foundation for communication with your ex after a breakup is no communication at all. So the no contact rule essentially refers to this period of time where you're cutting off all conceivable communication with your ex after a breakup. Now, the important part of the no contact rule is the intent of the no contact rule. The intent most people have is they want to make their ex miss them, but that's not the intent you should have. The intent you should have is not to make an ex miss you, but instead focusing all of your time on yourself, relentlessly pursuing self-improvement and outgrowing your ex. And by doing this, the irony is the no contact rule can actually have the effect desired, which is, wow, my ex misses me all of a sudden. Basically, you're going to be using this time away from your ex to get your mind right before you even dream of communicating with them. And that brings us to the second core tenet of communication, which is getting into the right frame of mind before you communicate. So one of the most interesting insights that we glean from talking to our successful clients post-breakup is that they tended to be the ones that outgrew their ex. When I say outgrow, I'm not saying that they didn't want them back. Many of them still did, but they got to a place emotionally where they wouldn't be broken if they didn't get them back. And this is the secret key to communicating with your ex. I want you to stop looking at your ex as the one. I want you to stop putting those constraints on yourself. In fact, what I find kind of ironic is that most of the people online searching for advice on how to win their exes back don't really know what they want. Sure, they'll argue that they want their exes back, but that's more of like a band-aid to stop the pain they're feeling from the breakup. What they really want is a relationship that makes them feel alive, that makes them feel happy. They want a husband, they want a wife, they want a best friend. That's what they want. If that ends up being their ex, cool. If not, that's cool too. So in my mind, my job is to give you the tools to help you attract that type of person. And I know one thing, approaching talking to an ex without any kind of leverage isn't the optimal way to test and see if they are worthy of you. And make no mistake about it, we are flipping the script here. I don't care what the situation was with your breakup. We want to determine that if they are worthy of you. So how do you do that? Well, in my opinion, you reshape your pedestal. Most of the clients that I deal with on a daily basis have basically this invisible hierarchy set up in their heads on what they value most in the life. So here's how it works. Number one at the top of their hierarchy after a breakup is their ex. That's the source of their pain. Everything goes into their ex. Next, they have family, then friends, then career, then their health. But here's how it should look. First should be your magnum opus, then your family, then your friends, then your health, then your career, then your ex. In other words, I'm arguing that most people going through a breakup structure their lives entirely wrong. You'll often hear me talk about the Holy Trinity on this website in reference to how to live your life: health, wealth, relationships, maximizing those areas. And with relationships, we're talking about relationships outside of your ex. And the truth is, though, your number one goal in life should be to spend your time doing something that gives you fulfillment, your magnum opus. Ideally, you can find a way to get paid for your magnum opus. Remember that book that I talked about above? I feel that's my magnum opus. That gives me meaning in life. That gives me purpose. It's a passion that I can talk about, think about, do all day long. So here's my question for you. What is yours? If you don't know what it is, that's what you should be spending your time on during the no contact rule. Find it and be relentless about pursuing it so that your ex firmly realizes they're not your number one priority anymore. Once you do that, then you'll be ready to reach out and talk to them. So what's kind of interesting about this video so far is half of it I have spent talking about all the things you should do before you talk to your ex and before you communicate and have the communication strategy. And that's because the communication strategy, we know down pat works. We have thousands of clients that have used it on their exes, on people that they're interested in getting into relationships with, so it is applicable. But the hard part is getting into the right mindset before you implement it. Nevertheless, let's jump in to the third and final tenet of communication after a breakup, and that is the 7-38-55 rule communication strategy. So I'm going to be honest with you, I don't do really well with faith. I'm more of an action-oriented person. My mind will literally eat itself if I don't have any type of action-oriented things set in front of me to be able to accomplish. That's how I feel about game plans. Without them, I feel lost. So that's what I created for my clients in regards to reattracting an ex. I called it the value ladder. So essentially at its core, it's a step-by-step plan teaching you how to communicate with your ex after a breakup. It's cool, right? But perhaps the most mind-blowing thing about it is that it follows something called the 7-38-55 rule. So according to masterclass.com, the 7-38-55 rule is a concept concerning the communication of emotions. The rule states that 7% of meaning is communicated through spoken word, 38% through tone of voice, 55% through body language, and is developed by a psychology professor named Albert Maribano, who's at the University of California, Los Angeles, who laid out the concept in his 1971 book, Silent Messages. So if you think about it, in today's dating environment, there are really only 3 levels of communication. You have texting, which can include Instagram DMs or Facebook Messenger, any type of text messaging, even email can be sort of like a text message type thing. Then you have sort of phone calls. Phone calls nowadays can also include video chat software like Zoom, Facebook Lives, I guess even, but more so FaceTime on Apple iPhones and stuff. And then finally, you have in-person interactions. This is when you're going on real dates. Now, what's interesting is when you look at each of these 3 mediums of communication, each firmly sits in the square of the 738-55 rule. So with texting, we're dealing with words. That means only 7% of meaning could potentially, usually it's a little bit more than that, but 7% of meaning could potentially be built through texting. Notice how that's not a lot. And yet the mistake most people make, especially when talking to their exes, is they only focus on engaging wordplay. 7% of a 100% equation. Then you, of course, have video chat, phone calls, or things like that. And really what you get there is a 38% tone of voice and sometimes a little bit of a body language type thing. But most of the time, if you're just doing a phone call, 38% of tone of voice is what's getting triggered there, as well as 7% of the meaning conveyed through words. So there you go. Finally, we have in-person interactions, going on real dates. This is where we get the whole shebang. We get 55% body language, 38% tone of voice, and 7% words. And here's the point I'm trying to make. I want you to notice how each layer of communication stacks on top of the other one. And this is the brilliance of the value ladder. So I put together this graphic on our website that basically kind of describes the value ladder in a nutshell and shows you that as you're stair-stepping your way to the top, you're slowly unlocking all of these different layers of communication and stacking them on top of one another. This is the correct way in which you should be engaging your ex. The big mistake that most of our clients make is they try to go too fast too soon. They try to go all in on the dating phase when an ex, especially one who's an avoidant, probably isn't ready. You have to almost stair-step your way up there, slowly rebuild value. And that ends up scaring an ex away when you don't do that correctly. And the 738-55 rule is designed to slowly help you work your way up that ladder. So after the foundational no contact rule strategy, which is more about the internal mindset you engage before you start texting, that's when you start the communication stuff we're talking about in this video. So you've gotten the right mindset through no contact, and now it's time to start communicating with your ex. The best thing you're going to do is take your first step on the first rung of the ladder, and that's to engage them in texting. You're engaging 7% of the potential meaning that you can convey. Once you build enough value in that texting phase, you climb the next run and start using phone calls. Again, rinse and repeat. Build value there while still texting, and then you can work your way up to a meetup or dates where you build more value there. And usually what can happen is once you have done this stair-step approach, your ex seriously starts considering taking you back if that's what you want, or you start realizing, I don't want this person back. I just got the secret key to dating. I'm going to apply this to anyone else, because the cool part about this is it applies across the board, no matter what type of communication you're trying to engage when you're going on dates. So really the key to this is we've seen it work for hundreds of our clients. We've seen it work to help our clients win their exes back. We've seen it work to help them find someone that they're now married to. So it's this universal approach to dating. And the beauty is that it's designed in a way to force you to slow down and consider if the person you're talking to is someone worth your time. Of course, it only works if you've ensured that you've knocked the person you are interested in off your pedestal and have put yourself first.